in order to look up information about Butler, in the process you could, you're starting a drawing and you need some information about Butler. So we could go and do a search on, to find out where the Butler website is. And but there's two different Butler companies basically. It's one company but the two different divisions. You've all heard of Butler Machinery probably, Caterpillars and things like that. That's Butler Machinery. And then we have Butler Buildings. So you'd want to type in Butler Buildings. And then you come up with Butler Building Systems and color charts and things like that. Let's just go to Butler Building Systems. And right here under the Butler Manufacturing home site, you'll see a gallery where you could look at images of buildings, get some ideas on how you might want your outside of your building to look. You could find a Butler Building Builder, products and systems, but we're going to look under specs and drawings. So if you clicked on specs and drawings, you would see there's a place that you could, let's just click on specifications for a second. And under downloads, they have specifications, a Canadian version and a CSI format United States. CSI stands for it's the master format system that we've dealt with in the past. So let's click on that and let's open it. Now this is not something I'm going to require that you do for this project, but here's a spot where if you were developing a set of drawings and specs for a pre-engineered metal building Butler version, you could start to develop your specifications. It's kind of an example that you can just fill in the blanks on. And it's all on the master format version of it. So this is what an architect would do in order to start developing a set of specifications for a building. So it's generally laid out, and there just needs to be some information plugged in from the shop drawings that you get from Butler. I'm just going to close this because we're not actually going to do this. And right below where it said specifications, we have detailed drawings and cross sections. Let's click on that. And it comes up with some places where you can get different types of drawings. Okay, so you can get a DXF of a drawing. You can get an actual AutoCAD drawing, not a Revit drawing, but an AutoCAD drawing of it. It's 2D line work, so it's not really something we're going to use. And you can get a PDF. So let's just look at the wide span structure. Roof system is the Butler Rib 2. We're going to use a standing seam. Wall system is metal, and the section is a sidewall section, and it gives you a description of the section. I'm just going to click on this first one on the PDF, and that's a typical cross-section information. So it's similar to the one I just handed out to you, but in this case you'll notice that the girts on this drawing are inset girts versus bypassing girts. So this wouldn't be a correct section for you to look at. And it also had the Butler Rib 2 roof panel, and we're going to use the standing seam roof panel. So this wouldn't be a good version to look at. So I'll just close that one. And we would have to go down and find the right panel to use for our building. And basically I've handed it out to you, so you don't really have to go look at that. But let's just go down and look at a wide span with the roof system being the MR24 panel, which we're going to use. That's the standing seam panel. And you'll notice that different wall systems, they're using CMUs instead of girts on this example. And so it'll be a masonry wall system versus a panel system. This one says tilt up. That's precast panels versus the metal panels. So there's a lot of different types of details down here that you could look at. So depending on what you plan on doing with your building, let's just click on one of these MR24s with a CMU sidewall. Let's just click on that PDF and look at that. Okay, so there you're just seeing the same rigid frame, the same purlins on the roof. In this case, we have the MR24 roof panel on it, and we have a masonry wall on the outside instead of girts. So you can, there's a lot of information on different panels. You'll notice if you look at the base of this, when we were developing our foundation plan, I said that our top of our pier was going to be level with the top of the floor. So in our case, we have the base of the column sitting right on the floor. They do offer an option where the column would set down into the floor system. In that case, you'd have to identify that, you know, instead of an 18-foot sidewall, it's an 18-foot 6-inch sidewall maybe. And then the column, when you create your foundation plan, you'd have your piers underneath the slab instead of on top of the slab. So we didn't do that, but it does show that there is an option for that. Okay, so I'm just going to close that again. So all of that is fairly easily found. So first off today, we're going to go and bring in a rigid frame from Revit City. Okay, some of you have already done that. You may have brought in the wrong one. I'm going to show you which one you should have brought in. So even if you brought in the wrong one, we can work with that, or we can look at a different one. I have brought one in here, and I've brought a couple in here, but I'm going to go look at it from the south elevation for a second. And you can see I have a rigid frame that I brought in here, and I just set it outside my building. And I threw some dimensions on it so that I could take a look at it. Okay, so this is roughly what our rigid frame is going to look like, but you have to take into account the handout that I just gave you. And so there might be some differences in the way this looks. The rigid frame that you bring in from Revit City is a generic rigid frame. It could work for Butler, it could work for Chief, it could work for Barco Pruden, all the different rigid frame companies. You just have to modify it to make it work for your example. So you might notice here that on this end of the building I've done some modification, and it looks somewhat similar to the handout that you have. It's not exactly the same right now. And if I pan over to the other end, this is what the frame looked like when it came in from Revit City. So there was some changes I made to this side. So first off, let's go to Revit City and find one. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the internet. And I want to type in Revit City, right? I want to go to Revit City Downloads, and I want to type in rigid frame. And search. Okay, on rigid frames you'll see that it comes in with, there's one here that you can't kind of see it, it's got a black background to it. There's another one here, there's one that doesn't show an image. So there's several different ones in here. Let's just talk about the different ones anyway. I'm looking at the last one. It says rigid frame with adjustable ridge. And it gives a little more description down here. The next one up says rigid frame with kinks. So what are kinks? Kinks means that the beam part of the frame, the roof support, is going to be two different shapes. So it might come up from the haunch part where the column connects to it at a certain angle, and then it might change to a different angle halfway up the roof. So it would have a kink in the rafter part of the frame. So we don't want that. The one that doesn't have an image, we don't know what that's going to be until we really bring it up. The next one up, I've opened this one up, and I found a problem with it because when I brought it in, the flanges weren't centered on the web of the frame, and it could be fixed, but it takes a little work to fix it, so it has some flaws to it. This first one up here that has the black square around it is the one that I brought in, and that's the one that I think we should bring in because it works the best. So load that one, or open that one. So you could log in, and I'll just log in here, I guess. I've already brought it in, but and then I'll download it. Okay. So this is the download. It hasn't been brought into my project yet, but this is what the download comes in like. Okay. And before you load it into your project, you can look at it in several different ways. You can take a look and see how it looks. You can look at it from the back. You can look at it from the front. You can look at it from the left side or right side. So you can see all the different angles of it. What I want you to do is click up here where it says Load into Project and bring that into your project. I'm not going to because I already have it in there, so I'm just going to close mine. Because I've already brought it into my project. Okay, so once you've brought it into your project, we need to, first off, go back and look at the shop drawing information that I handed out earlier on the frames from Butler. So I'll give you a second to look that up. Okay, so there's a lot of modifications we can do to that. If we take a look at this frame that we brought in and just click on the frame and go to the properties again, when this frame was brought in, I don't know if you noticed it, but one of the options was to put eave extensions on. And if I'm zoomed in on here, and if you look under Properties and before you go to Edit, you'll see under Graphics there's an eave extensions box here that hasn't been checked. If I check that, it puts that little eave extension on. Okay. And that eave extension would be something that would support the eave strut, right? Because we have bypassing girts. Now the eave strut for Butler isn't exactly that shape. So I'm going to turn that off for a second. So that is an option in this frame that we could do that. If you are using an American metal building, they do have that type of extension, so that would be something you want to add. Okay, I'm going to go to edit the family of this corner because I want to change this. So I'll click on the frame, highlight it in blue, go to edit the family. It comes in the 3D view. I want to go look at it from the elevations, probably the front. Okay, so I'm looking at it from this angle. Okay, so I want to edit the frame here. So first off, I'm going to click on, you can see as you go around it, you have different component parts. I'm going to click on this part and I'm simply going to delete it. So I deleted the sweep that was on that part, and then there's still an extrusion, so I'll delete that as well. Okay, so now I'm missing a whole piece in there. Now I'm going to click on the rafter beam part of this, and I'm going to want to get just the extrusion. So if I hit the tab key, I can collect just the extrusion part. So there's an extrusion with a sweep around it that creates the flange. So I want to edit the extrusion. So now I have that extrusion. I'm going to go to align. I'm going to start here. I'm going to bring that out here. I'm going to go to here. Take this one and bring it out. I'm actually going to just fillet that. And I want the distance from there, here out to here to be 8 inches, right? Because that's the way the beam is shown in our shop drawings. So I'm going to put a dimension on there. Now from inside of the sweep to the end of this, I want that to be 8 inches. So I'll click on that and change that dimension to 8. Then I can delete that dimension. And then I want to get rid of that line. Okay. So I think that's what that should look like. So then I'll just finish that. And now that's my beam flange. Web, I mean. Now I need to change the sweep path. The sweep is actually a flat plate, right? And it follows a path around this extrusion. So I want to edit the sweep. Click on the sweep. And I want to sketch the path. Okay, so it highlights the path again in this kind of magenta color. And I'll go to a line, and I'm going to go out here. Okay, so I've modified that path, and I need to get rid of that line. And so I have that path around there now. The distance between the end of the flange and that line should be 1/4 inch, because that's what the thickness of my sweep is. So I'll just throw a dimension on here to verify that. Yeah, and it is 1/4. And then I'll just finish that. And finish that. Okay, so now I have that end the way I want it to look on my drawing, right? Now before I finish this, I need to make that same look on the other end, right? So I'll let you go ahead and make that same alteration to the other end. So I'm just going to pause the video. So once you've got it brought back into your building, and in my case it's sitting the wrong way, it needs to be rotated within the building. So I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to go to rotate it 90 degrees. I put some dimensions on it, so it's going to give me a statement that says that the dimensions won't work, so I just want to delete those. I don't want them on it anyway at this point. So then I will just take probably and copy that multiple times from the intersection of the outside of it. up again on the grid line up against the girt then, right? Oops. I guess I didn't get it in the right spot. Move it. Okay. And then copy it to the different locations. Now, if we look at our building from the isometric view, I still have one sitting outside here someplace, but I want to just take and highlight my roof, and I'm going to hide it in the view for a second. And you should be able to see those frames in their proper locations. If you're zoomed out too far, you might notice that you see the end of the haunch through the panel. It's just because it's within 1.25 inches of the outside of the building. As soon as you zoom in, that'll disappear. So it's okay. It should be all right. So then I'm going to go put my roof back on, I guess. Okay, so that's how you bring in a rigid frame, make adjustments to it, make it match up with the right size building you have. So now if we go back, and if you have a section on your building, you'll be able to see it. If you don't have a section, you'll need to put one on, but at this point I have one here, so I'll just click on that section, and now I can see that that rigid frame is in the right location. And I need to probably look at maybe some modifications here, because as I highlight my panel, you'll notice that it looks like it's the right height at the outside, but at the peak it's going up through my purlins, right? So I must have something wrong with my height at the middle of the building. And we put in a height that we got off of the Butler information. But again, that ridge height on the Butler information was to the top of the purlins again. So I need to make an adjustment up there to get that down to the right spot. So again, you'd want to find out what's wrong here. So I can zoom in. I can see that my rigid frame goes right up to that peak there. I need it down to this point, so if I go and draw some lines, I just go to annotation. I want to bring it down to this point, and it is at this point. So I just drew a couple of horizontal lines there so that I could dimension it. I need to bring it down that 9.5 inches, right? And I probably should have known that, but okay, so now I can go back and click on my rigid frame, go back to edit the type, and the peak height, which we put in at 20'6", needs to be 9.5 inches less than that, which is what? $19 foot. 19 foot, 8.5. Apply that, say OK, and now it's down where it's supposed to be. Okay, so make sure that when you make these changes and then you go back to start working on your section that you check those things out. You know, it's pretty easy just to ignore that and then your section's going to all be wrong, but always verify that you've done everything right. Pretty easy to make minor little mistakes like that. Then you can delete those lines. And now you're ready to start putting in purlins and girts and so forth. In a little bit here, we'll talk about the standing seam metal roof. At this point, we don't have a standing seam metal roof on it, but we will address that in an upcoming video. So you can go ahead and start detailing out this cross section now. You're going to be drawing in the eave strut, the purlins, the girts as just line work. You don't need to create extrusions or anything for that, for this detail. So just go ahead and using the information that you have from your Butler information and the handouts I've given you, start to develop the section that looks like the handout I gave you today.